This is the Citiesville Bridge. Or at least it was. 3 superpowered little girls flew through that bridge to stop 2 bank robbers from escaping. And now those robbers, well, they had stolen $400. That bridge cost $3 million to build, and it was a historical landmark that can't be replaced on top of that. That's a ratio of 1 to $7,500. For every dollar of crime the Powerpuff Girls prevented in Citiesville, they caused $7,500 of damage doing it, and that's if we're not even counting the historic landmark aspect. This is the moment the Powerpuff Girls got run out of a major American city for property damage. In Townsville, this is Tuesday. So let me ask you something. What does emergency response look like in your city? Probably some version of you call 911, you get an operator, they route you to the police or fire or medical, and somebody who has been trained for what you're calling for usually shows up. Well, in Townsville, it looks like this. A direct red phone in the mayor's office that rings a kindergarten classroom. That's it. That's the whole apparatus. 3 5-year-olds with a landline. And look, I don't want to oversell the mayor. He's a sweet guy. He means well. He is also on multiple documented occasions calling the Powerpuff Girls to open his pickle jar. He calls them about traffic jams.
Well, I'm stuck in the middle of this huge traffic jam.
He calls them about, every conceivable category of non-emergency a person can have a non-emergency about. Now, before you start writing the comment, yeah, I know, maybe the guy just can't open it. Maybe the mayor's just a frail little dude. Sure. Except in the episode in Peach Fuzz, this same mayor, this exact man, beats Fuzzy Lumpkins unconscious with his bare hand. So he has got hands. He just doesn't want to use them. He's choosing to outsource jar opening to 3 superpowered 5-year-olds while we know for a fact that he could do it himself. Also, one small thing. The mayor's legal name is Mayor. His name is Mayor. His campaign slogan was, and I am not making this up,
vote for mayor, for mayor, vote for mayor, for mayor.
That's the man. That's the one who's running the city. Tom Kenny, if you don't know. SpongeBob. Ice King from Adventure Time. Half the cartoons that you grew up watching. That's who voices him. And the thing that drove me kind of insane the more I thought about this is it's not just him. Because in Peach Fuzz, Fuzzy Lumpkins, a literal pink hillbilly monster, becomes the mayor of Townsville. And how? You might ask. Well, he told everybody to shut up.
Shut up!
That's it. That's the campaign. And the town went, oh, okay, you're our guy. The bar for getting elected in Townsville is being the loudest thing in the room. It's almost like nobody in this town even knew that they could vote for somebody else. And the second that Fuzzy gets this title, he starts using that exact same hotline. The same red phone to chase his loose pig to play in a jug band for his amusement. Same phone, different idiot. Well, the phone's a bit different here, but it accomplishes the same thing. It's basically identical. The institution is broken. The man, he's just the symptom. Now, the saving grace of the Townsville government, the one functioning adult on the entire payroll, is Miss Bellum. Now, you have never seen her face in 6 seasons of television. The most competent person in Townsville government is a faceless aide with no formal authority, outside of the 10th anniversary special, that is. She also has a neck the size of a giraffe. It's not really relevant here, but I thought it was interesting. I wanted to show you. Now, Bellum, by the way, might not be this saint the show frames her as, and if some fan theories are correct, her reason for not showing her face might tie into a bit of a conspiracy theory. Now, there's a real argument that she's complicit in this whole apparatus, that the institution can't function without her or the girls, and she knows it. But that conspiracy is for a different video. For now, we're staying focused on the facts we know and not the theories that Townsville is a government testing ground, which is the theory. Could be, we don't know. Different video. So let's just dive right in, because on the surface, bad enough, we do not need a conspiracy here. Now the girls, the actual emergency responders to Townsville, no salary, no contract, no benefits, no background check. The professor still pays for their juice boxes. And one more thing before we move on. At the end of Peach Fuzz, the mayor regains office, walks back to his desk, and the first thing he does is pick up the hotline and call the girls about a pig. That's the pathology. Now, here's the part that gets me, because this isn't just a system that's broken for the city, it's broken for the girls themselves. In the episode Speed Demon, the Powerpuff Girls are leaving for vacation. They're going to the Bahamas, and the thing they are most excited about, more excited than the beach, is just not having to answer the hotline phone. They even make fun of the mayor on their way out the door.
Wow! Powerpuff Girls, this is the mayor! Get over here right away! I seem to have accidentally
These are the emergency responders, and what they want more than anything in the world is to just stop being the emergency responders. And the show is one canonical example of what happens when one of them snaps under the weight of this job. In the episode Bubblicious, Bubbles has had it. Tired of being treated like the soft sister, she goes into the training simulator, cranks it all the way to 11, and beats it easily. Not long after that, a traffic jam breaks out, and instead of trying to solve the actual traffic jam, she just goes after this dog person guy. She's gonna murder this dog person guy, and her sisters have to talk her down. And after they talk her down, she goes on to assault multiple people for petty crimes. A 5-year-old superhero is doing this just because the city has not built a single piece of mental health infrastructure for her. Now, to be honest, this just results in a better show. Nobody wants to watch a cartoon character go to therapy.
Because I don't respect therapy.
So instead of therapy, Bubbles overcomes her breakdown the way Townsville solves every other problem, by beating the absolute out of Mojo Jojo. And speaking of Mojo Jojo, he didn't come from nowhere. So yeah, Mojo Jojo was literally created by the professor. Professor Utonium, Townsville's most accomplished private citizen, holder of 0 documented degrees, employer unknown, subject of 0 on-screen federal inspections. This man, in his unregulated home laboratory in a residential neighborhood in a major American city, was attempting to create the perfect little girls out of sugar, spice, and everything nice. He accidentally adds a substance called Chemical X, which has never been chemically defined, never been peer-reviewed, and which does not appear on any periodic table that I'm aware of, and the result was the Powerpuff Girls. But okay, fine, accidents happen, roll with it. Except, and this is the part where I started screaming at my TV, the same lab also produced Mojo Jojo. The professor's pet monkey Jojo was mutated into Mojo Jojo by exposure to the exact same Chemical X explosion that created the girls. Let that sink in. The professor's home lab is responsible for the creation of Townsville's primary supervillain. The man who has tried to kill 3 children and conquer the city on what feels like a weekly basis. He was made in the same room, the same accident, the same lab as the children he's trying to kill. And it gets worse, because according to the professor's own retelling, Jojo physically pushed him into Chemical X. Who is there supervising you, Professor Utonium? Because it seems like nobody. Now, Mojo tells this story like he was a sweet little pet monkey who only turned evil after the professor stopped paying attention to him post-girl. Classic supervillain neglected orphan arc. Except the episode itself shows you the truth. Mojo was a little hellion before the girls existed. He's just got an unreliable narrator's flair for self-pity. So the actual story is, the professor wasn't a bad parent. He was a parent who couldn't keep track of his own creation history. He raised a destructive monkey. The destructive monkey shoved him into an experimental chemical. The chemical produced 3 superpowered children and made him powerful. And years later, when the same monkey starts trying to murder those children on a regular basis, the professor doesn't even remember that he raised him. But how much weed is this man smoking? And it gets worse, because at one point in the episode, Mojo, the now super intelligent supervillain who was openly trying to take over the city, walks up to the professor and asks for the same superpowers as the girls.
Give me superpowers like them!
And the professor, he just goes, sure, buddy, why not? No background check, no safety review, no waiting period. And it immediately backfires, because of course it does. And this is the cherry on top. In Speed Demon, 50 years in the future, the older professor can't even remember the basic ingredients he used to make the Powerpuff Girls to begin with. He invented the most powerful beings on the planet out of 3 things and a chemical, and he didn't write down any of it. None of it, he doesn't remember. It's 4 ingredients. Sugar, spice, everything nice, and Chemical X. It's not that hard. So now we're at it. The professor created the supervillain who created the heroes who fight the supervillain. The lab is on both sides of this war. The same uncertified, unaudited, unincorporated home chemistry setup is the origin point of the central conflict in the city, and the man who runs it cannot reliably remember any of it. And here's the thing, and I want to be careful with this one, because Craig McCracken himself, the creator of the entire show, has gone on record about who the professor is supposed to be. In a 2021 reply to a fan researching the character, McCracken said, and I am quoting directly here, Professor Utonium was always supposed to be sweet and innocent. Nothing dark or unethical about him. Though the girl's powers and abilities were more than he bargained for, and his concern for their safety kept him up at night. He loves them with all his heart like any good dad would. And I believe him, not just because he's the creator, but nothing in the show would lead me to believe otherwise. And that's what makes this kind of insane. The professor is not a mad scientist. He's not Walter White. He's not some shadowy lab cowboy doing unethical fringe science in a basement. He is, by the creator's own statement, a loving dad, a sweet, well-meaning, slightly forgetful, loving dad, who happens to run an unregulated chemistry lab in a residential neighborhood. And that alone, with no malice involved, with the man trying his absolute best, was enough to produce the city's primary supervillain. The man is not the problem. The vacuum here is the problem. Because, and I mean this, nobody, and I mean nobody, has ever knocked on the professor's door and said, hey, can we see your books? 6 seasons of giant monkey laser fights and demonic possessions and Mondays, and not once, not in a federal inspection, not in a permit dispute, not in a goddamn zoning hearing, does anyone with any authority over chemistry, scientific research, or hazardous material show up at the professor's door and ask the professor, what the hell are you doing in your basement, Utonium? A good man with a bad memory and a regulatory vacuum produced the Powerpuff Girls and Mojo Jojo, and no one in the United States government has ever cared enough to walk over and ask. That isn't a quirky kid show. That's a disaster waiting to happen. That also makes a fun quirky kid show. Now, speaking of things nobody has ever audited, and now I know what you're thinking, Ruff, this is a kid show, you're overthinking it. You're goddamn right I am, that's what I do here. So that being said, let me tell you about him. He is a tall, red lobster clawed demon. He wears thigh-high boots, he wears a tutu, he has a falsetto voice that warps between honeyed and demonic in the same breath. He bends reality, characters' bodies, the show's color palette, the laws of cause and effect whenever he's in frame. In the episode Speed Demon, the girls travel 50 years into the future, and him is still there, unchanged, unaged. Every other villain in that future timeline, gone. The girls land in Townsville where Mojo isn't there, Fuzzy isn't there, Princess isn't there. Nobody who used to attack Townsville is there. The only one left, the one who walked into 50 years of unchecked time and didn't lose a step, is him. Now, per fan archived creator commentary, McCracken has separately indicated him killed them. That's the wider villain ecosystem in that future. It's gone because him put it down. Now, I can't link you the original tweet. The source has been documented though across multiple Powerpuff Girls reference wikis, but the primary post isn't currently surfaceable. His Twitter's since been gone, and it's pretty hard to find these old tweets. But it's credited enough times that I feel comfortable saying that it happened. Either way, what the episode shows on its own is enough. Him is the last villain standing. He doesn't age, he doesn't lose. Time moves around him. So what is he? He's the devil. And I mean, they don't say that. On Cartoon Network, they weren't allowed to say that. But everyone watching the show in 1998 and beyond understood it. HuffPost actually ran a piece called Definitive Proof Him is the Most Disturbing Villain in Cartoon History. And that headline is in fact a verifiable headline. Craig McCracken himself, the creator of the entire show, has placed him at the top of the villain hierarchy because he's the most evil. And worth noting before we move on, him has spent 6 seasons in Townsville specifically. He's never relocated. He never goes after a city without 3 superpowered children stationed there. And why? Ego? Destiny? Something we don't know yet? For a different video, I guess, but today we're gonna stay on what we can see. And what we can see when Speed Demon shows us a Townsville 50 years after the girls disappeared is him in control. The citizens broken, the city gone. But this makes sense once you dig a little deeper, because before the Powerpuff Girls was a Cartoon Network show, Craig McCracken made a series of pitch reels while he was at Cal Arts. The property was originally called Whoop Ass Stew, and the girls were called the Whoop Ass Girls. And in Whoop Ass Stew pitch pilot number 2, the version of the property right before Cartoon Network locked the show, the character that became him is explicitly identified as the devil.
It's the devil!
So here's where we are. The town of Townsville has a confirmed Satan problem. The creator of the show wanted to tell you that out loud, and the network, Cartoon Network, said no. The literal devil walks around in lobster claws and thigh-high boots, possessing children's stuffed animals on a Sunday afternoon, and the network's contribution to the conversation was, don't call him what he is. And all because parents in the 90s couldn't help but complain about the most inconsequential things. And even if the argument was that it upset religious people, which, let's be honest, is a tale as old as time when it comes to media in America, I don't really understand why showing the devil get beat up is supposed to be a bad thing. I mean, it's not like they glorify him. It's abundantly clear he is the embodiment of evil, which as far as I'm aware is kind of the devil's whole deal. But regardless, the point is, don't let anyone pretend like we didn't have rampant censorship decades ago. It was worse then to a degree. Now we just censor other stupid things. The civic response of Townsville to a literal demon sending 3 small children to fight him in person with their bare hands monthly for 6 years. That's not even the most insane part. The most insane part is that the country watching it wasn't allowed to call him what he was. Make it make sense, Cartoon Network. You had one of the greatest cartoons in American history. You had a creator with a clear and creative vision. You had a villain who is, by your own creator's admission, the literal devil, and your contribution to the project was making sure he was never called by name because a bunch of whiny babies. You wouldn't have to do anything else. You could just let the man name his bad guy. And here's the kicker. Himself, in his own 50-year future apocalypse, ruling over the wasteland, he made, can't even say the word hell. The actual devil has to self-censor on his own show to describe the apocalypse he caused. That's the network. That's what we did to it. But here's the thing. They didn't have to say it because we all knew. Okay, so we've established the city as no real government. The lab is a regulatory black hole, the villain is the devil, stuff is bad. It gets worse. Because off the coast of Townsville, visible from the city, is an island called Monster Isle. Now, this is an island filled with giant monsters, the kind that level skyscrapers, the kind that kaiju movies are about. It is right there. You can see it from the boardwalk. The monsters from Monster Isle attack Townsville on what appears to be a weekly basis, multiple times a season. The narrator describes this as a routine occurrence. Now, in any other American city, and let me check my notes here, when an island full of city leveling threats sits offshore, the federal response generally includes things like, I don't know, the National Guard, the Coast Guard, the US Navy, FEMA, the FAA, a congressional hearing, a documentary on 60 Minutes. In Townsville, nothing. The closest thing Townsville has to be a national defense budget is the professor's electric bill. But here's the thing that gets me, the thing I keep coming back to. It's not just that the government doesn't show up. It's that the people of Townsville have stopped asking it to. Watch any episode. Watch what the citizens do. They run, they scream, they get rescued, they go home. They don't call their congressman because there isn't one. They don't relocate, they don't sue, they don't vote anyone out.
Because once again, the day is saved. Thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.
When Fuzzy Lumpkins became the mayor, they re-elect the pickle jar guy without comment. And when the girls save the day, they don't celebrate. They brand. The girls aren't celebrities. They're a civic religion. The town has absorbed the failure of its own institutions into its identity. These people are not waiting for help anymore. They have become a populace that accepts the apocalypse as a seasonal weather pattern. They've stopped asking. They've stopped expecting. They have somewhere along the way just decided that this is what life is. And honestly, good for them. Now here's the thing. We would have no way of knowing any of this was wrong. We could watch 6 seasons of the Powerpuff Girls and just assume Townsville is what cities are. That every city has a hotline, that every city has a Bellum, that every city has a Monster Isle and a him and an unregulated chemistry uncle. Except once, exactly once, the show takes the girls somewhere else. And to be clear, Citiesville is not paradise. The episode opens on a man at a place called the Shady Inn putting on a ski mask, pulling out a gun, telling his buddy Jim he's going to work. The school is built like a prison, the kids are jerks, the hotel is gross. Citiesville has problems. But here's the thing, it has institutions. Citiesville has cops. They're struggling, they're getting outsmarted, they're kind of dumb, but they exist. Townsville has no on-screen police force. Citiesville has one. Citiesville has a mayor with actual authority, not a pickle jar guy, a guy who can make decisions. And most importantly, Citiesville has a school that isn't an emergency response unit.
Take your seats.
But
The city's on fire. The girls who are sitting right there at the desks try to leave to save it, and the teacher says no. Remember the kindergarten classroom from earlier? In Townsville, that classroom is the 911 dispatch. In Citiesville, the city's on fire, 3 actual superheroes are sitting at desks and the teacher tells them to sit down. And that's what institutional faith looks like, whether it works or not. Citiesville School is a school because Citiesville has other things that handle the fires. Townsville seemingly doesn't. And of course, the girls being the girls and being from Townsville, they can't help themselves. They sneak out anyways, they see a bank robbery, they go to stop it. And then they cause $3 million in damage to the Citiesville bridge, stopping a robbery of $400. And as it turns out, the bridge wasn't just $3 million, it was an irreplaceable historical landmark, like I said at the start of the video. And the mayor of Citiesville, a man who has clearly seen a spreadsheet at some point in his life, does the math the mayor of Townsville has never done. He's furious. The city is furious. The press is furious. And here's the line that did it for me. At one point, this mayor breaks down and admits,
"Nobody actually lives in Citiesville. They commute."
think about what that means. Citiesville is a business district. Damage to its infrastructure has economic cost, but no social cushion. Nobody comes home to it. Nobody calls it theirs, which is the polar opposite of Townsville. A city so emotionally attached to its own collapse, Townsville is loved by its people. Citiesville is used by its people. They're different pathologies. One produced a civic religion, the other produced a place nobody lives. So what does Citiesville do about the girls? He signs a bill outlawing the use of their powers in city limits, and it's enforced by police helicopters immediately. In half an episode of television, Citiesville passes legislation against the Powerpuff Girls and enforces it with airborne patrol. 6 seasons of unchecked monster attacks, demonic possessions on Sunday afternoons, a literal devil in a tutu walking around downtown, an unregulated chemistry lab producing supervillains in a residential neighborhood, and the mayor of Townsville response across all 6 seasons was to call about a pickle jar. The professor loses his job over it. Think about what that means. We just watched the Powerpuff Girls. 3 superpowered children who are in their home city are celebrated as a civic religion, basically get ejected from a functioning American city for property damage in a single episode. Not even a single episode, in a half episode, one of the half-length things. The girls aren't the problem. The girls were never the problem. The problem is what Townsville has become. And one more thing, we know how this story ends if the girls aren't there, because the show showed us. Remember, 50 years after the Powerpuff Girls don't show up, Townsville's gone. Him owns it. The citizens are broken. The city's a wasteland. So now we have both halves of the proof. Citiesville proves what happens when the girls are removed from a normal city. They get legislated against. Speed Demon proves what happens when Townsville is removed from the girls. It collapses. Same equation, both variables tested, either one removed, catastrophe. That's not coincidence, that's load bearing. The girls aren't Townsville's superhero team, they are the city's load bearing wall. Take them out, the whole thing collapses. Speed Demon proved it in 11 minutes. Citiesville proved it in 11 minutes from the opposite direction. Townsville knows it, they just don't say it out loud. It's not a celebration of childhood heroism. That's not a kid's show about wish fulfillment. That's a 21-minute weekly reminder that this city would not exist tomorrow without the active sacrifice of 3 small children. That's the show. The Powerpuff Girls is easily one of the best kid shows ever made. I think that's basically undeniable at this point. Greg McCracken and his team built something extraordinary, and they did it on purpose. The absurdity isn't an accident. The civic failure isn't a bug. The world of Townsville is broken on purpose because that's where the comedy comes from. They knew. They wrote it that way. And every kid watching laughed at the right beats without ever quite knowing why. That's why the show works. That's why it still works almost 30 years later. It's funnier the longer you look at it because the world is broken but with intent. But the show told us every week in the same opening credits in the same narrator's voice what it was actually about.
And so, once again, the day is saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.
The city of Townsville, that's how it starts every time, and it ends every time with once again the day is saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. Think about what those 2 sentences mean together. The city of Townsville is a place that has to be saved daily or it ceases to exist. That isn't a description of a healthy city, that's a description of one that's basically already gone. The narrator told you every week. And the funny thing, the narrator's also voiced by Tom Kenny. Does this man voice everybody? The same actor is the symptom of the civic collapse and the voice that has to tell you every week that the collapse has been temporarily forestalled. The point is, the city was always the joke. The girls were never the joke. The joke was on Townsville. And I love this show. I'll keep loving this show. And I'm going to keep coming back to its weird, broken, beautiful, absurd, little failed state world because honestly, it might be the most accurate cartoon about being American that anyone ever wrote. And if you got this far, hit subscribe. Maybe you want to see me talk about other crazy worlds in the cartoon universe, and I'd love to do it. So be vocal about it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
And so, once again, the day is saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.